2. The NFL's ongoing problems with race. 61. History shows that the NFL is synonymous with ownership resistance to anti-racist protest, and that continues to the present day. 8. See Hallie Harding, So What? Los Angeles Tribune, February 7, 1941, as cited in Moore, The NFL and a History of Black Protest. 9. See George Preston Marshall, Pro Football Hall of Fame official site, PPFHOOFF, accessed January 27, 2022, available at https://www.profitballhof.com. Layers George Preston Marshall. For his part, Tim Merrer's Hall of Fame entry does not include any reference to New York's complicity with the NFL's racist segregationist policies. See Tim Merrer, Pro Football Hall of Fame official site, PPFHOOFF, accessed January 27, 2022, available at https://www.profitballhof.com. Players Tim Merrer, Case 122 CV00871 Document 1 filed 2 January 2022 page 15 of 58, 16, A. Discrimination against Colin Kaepernick, 62, as has been well documented, during the 2016 NFL season, Colin Kaepernick protested societal racial injustice by kneeling during the national anthem, 63. Following the 2016-2017 season, a season in which over the course of 11 games, he had 16 touchdowns against only 4 interceptions, 468 rushing yards and a passer rating of 90.7, no NFL team would offer him a job, even as a backup, 64. To even a casual observer it was clear that Mr. Kaepernick was more than qualified for a roster spot in the NFL, 65. Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll explained the Seahawks' rationale for not bringing him in. He's a starter in this league, and we have a starter, but he's a starter in this league, and I can't imagine that someone won't give him a chance to play. 10. 66. The New York Giants gave Mr. Kaepernick no consideration and suggested that it was because the team feared backlash from the fans if it signed Mr. Kaepernick, a statement that journalists understandably labeled dangerous. 11. 67. In an August 2017 article titled, Colin Kaepernick is not supposed to be unemployed, the statistics website 538 stated it's obvious Kaepernick is being frozen out for his political opinions that above average quarterback has been unemployed. 10. See Wikipedia, Shield, Pete Carroll on Colin Kaepernick, not doing anything yet, but he's a starter in this league. ESPN.com, June 2, 2017, available at https://www.espn.com. NFL story id/19,523,162/ Pete Carroll says Seattle Seahawks not signing Colin Kaepernick. 11. C. Biderman, Chris, why Giants owner John Mara's statement on Colin Kaepernick is dangerous. USA Today, May 29, 2017. Available at https://ninerswire.usatoday.com/2017/05/29/ Giants owner John Mara's statement on Colin Kaepernick is dangerous. This was a particularly outrageous position to take given that the Giants had just signed a white kicker, Josh Brown, after he was arrested for domestic violence and kept him off the team after he was suspended for the same misconduct. It took the murder of George Floyd and the related nationwide protests for you to publicly convey your support for players who choose to kneel during the anthem. Case 122 CV00871 Document 1 filed 2 January 2022 page 16 of 58, 17, nearly as long as Kaepernick and it's easy to lose sight of the reality that good quarterbacks often never even reach free agency, let alone remain unsigned for so long. 12. 68. Mr. Kaepernick's protests received a variety of reactions, both positive and negative, with then-President Donald J. Trump siding against him and calling on the nearly all-white NFL owners to fire players who protested during the national anthem. President Trump referred a player who protested, clearly referring to Mr. Kaepernick, as that son of a bitch. 69. In an October 2017 meeting among owners, players and league executives to address racial injustice protests by players. NFL owners effectively endorsed President Trump's opinion that a player who protests racial injustice is a son of a bitch and stated an unwillingness to act contrary to Trump's directives 1370. As time went on, still no team would sign Mr. Kaepernick for any role, starter or backup, despite the fact that he clearly deserved such a role based on merit, skill and experience. While some owners gave lip service to solidarity with black players, NFL owners still collectively refused to employ Mr. Kaepernick following his racial justice protests. 71. During these years, many teams, including the New York Giants, could have used his services as a clear roster upgrade, but he remained blackballed. 72. Against the backdrop of the league's high story, this conduct remains an appalling example of the league's continued problems with race. 12. C. Wagner, Kyle. Colin Kaepernick is not supposed to be unemployed. F538, August 9, 2017. Available at https://fivethatite.com. Features Colin Kaepernick is not supposed to be unemployed. 13. C. McCann, Michael. The leaked October tapes and the Kaepernick collusion case. Sports Illustrated, April 25, 2018. Available at https://www.si.com. NFL, the 25th of April 2018. Leaked tapes. NFL owners players October meeting Kaepernick collusion case. Donald Trump, Case 122 CV00871. Document 1 filed 2 January 2022. Page 17 of 58. 18. B. Acquiescence to discrimination by head coach John Gruden. 73. John Gruden, the 30-year NFL insider and 3-time head coach, is the embodiment of the NFL's acquiescence to racism. 74. In October 2021, it was disclosed that between 2011 and 2018, Mr. Gruden exchanged a slew of emails containing racist, misogynistic and homophobic slurs to Washington football team's then general manager Bruce Allen. 75. Mr. Gruden remarked that DeMaurice Smith, the NFL Players Association executive director, had lips the size of Michelin ties. 76. Mr. Gruden also stated that players who protested the national anthem to protest racial inequalities hold be fired. 77. Mr. Smith responded to reports of these emails saying, "Racism like this comes from the fact that I'm at the same table as they are and they don't think someone who looks like me belongs." 14. 78. As stated, Mr. Gruden's emails also contained a slew of additional offensive conduct. The emails referred to Mr. Goodell as a faggot and a clueless anti-faux football pussy, and said Mr. Goodell should not have pressured the Rams to draft queers, referring to the drafting of Michael Sam, the first openly gay player drafted by an NFL team in 2014, something which the Rams coach has denied. Mr. Gruden also called then United States Vice President Joe Biden a nervous clueless pussy. 15. 14. C. Raiders. NFL condemned John Gruden for using racial trope in 2011 email to describe NFLPA Executive Director DeMaurice Smith. NFL.com, October 8, 2021. Available at https://www.nfl.com. US Raiders. NFL condemned John Gruden for using racial trope in 2011 email to describe text equals %22 racism %20 like %20 this %20 comes %20 from not %20 let %20 at %20 define %20 me %22. 15. C. Belson, Ken and Rossman, Catherine. Raiders coach resigns after homophobic and misogynistic emails. New York Times, October 11, 2021. Available at https://www.nytimes.com/20. The 21st of October 2011. Sports Football. What did John Gruden say? HTML. Case 122 CV00871. Document 1 filed 2 January 2022. Page 18 of 58. 19. 79. Mr. Gruden and Mr. Allen also exchanged emails with other members of the Washington football team star FF with photos of topless women, including 2 team cheerleaders. 80. In one email from 2015 that includes several Football Inside RS including Mr. Allen, Gruden asked Mr. Allen to tell Brian Glazer, part of the family which owns the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to perform oral sex on him. 81. Mr. Gruden also mocked Caitlyn Jenner, a transgender former Olympic athlete. 82. It simply cannot be a surprise to NFL executives, insiders and team owners, who have collectively spent the last 3 decades in the proximity of Mr. Gruden, that this is who Mr. Gruden is and that these are the beliefs he harbors. 83. Nonetheless, Mr. Gruden remained an inner circle candidate for virtually every head coach position over the 10-year period that followed his departure from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2008. 84. Ultimately, in 2018, Mr. Gruden received the largest contract in history for an NFL head coach, when the Las Vegas Raiders signed him to a 10-year, $100 million deal. 85. The Raiders' hiring of Mr. Gruden occurred in close succession with the Raiders' firing of general manager Aggie McKenzie, one of the few black general managers in the league. 86. Under Mr. McKenzie, the Raiders had the highest percentage of black players, at 82.3%, and he won the NFL Executive of the Year award in 2016 after compiling a 12-4 record. 87. Only 2 years later, Mr. McKenzie was fired and replaced by Mike Mayock, a white candidate. Under all-white leadership, owner, general manager and head coach, the Case 122 CV00871 Document 1 filed 2 January 2022 page 19 of 58. 20. Percentage of black players on the Raiders decreased every year that followed. By 2021, the percentage of black players on the Raiders roster dropped to 67.2%. 88. Though Mr. Gruden is no longer employed by the Raiders, it has been reported that the NFL was well aware of Mr. Gruden's offensive emails for several months and took no action. 16. 89. When the news of Mr. Gruden's racist emails finally surfaced, rather than an unequivocal rebuke and a for-cause termination, the Raiders allowed him to graciously resign, and claim that it was due to his desire not to be a distraction. 90. Mr. Gruden even had the gall to blame the NFL and Mr. Goodell, claiming that they were responsible, not him for his own actions, for his termination. 17. C. The NFL's concussion settlement discriminated against black players. 91. In 2011, retired NFL players began filing personal injury actions in courts around the country seeking damages or relief in the form of medical monitoring. Some of these actions were filed on behalf of a class, some for small groups of former players and others for individuals. Collectively, the concussion lawsuits. 92. As alleged in the concussion lawsuits, the NFL for decades was aware of the evidence and the risks associated with repetitive traumatic brain injuries, but nevertheless, ignored, minimized, disputed, and actively suppressed broader awareness of the link between subconcussive and concussive injuries in football and the chronic neurocognitive damage, illnesses, and decline suffered by former players. 16. C. Beaton, Andrew. How the NFL learned months ago of the offensive emails that cost John Gruden his job. The Wall Street Journal, October 12, 2021. Available at https://www.wsj.com. Article John Gruden emails investigation Washington football team. 11,634,079,234. 17. C. Whelan, Catherine. John Gruden sues NFL for allegedly leaking emails that led to his resignation. NPR, November 13, 2021. Available at https://www.npr.org. The 13th of November 2021. 1,055,574,569. John Gruden sues NFL for allegedly leaking emails that led to his resignation. Case 122 CV00871 Document 1 filed 2 January 2022 page 20 of 58. 21. 93. The NFL was also alleged to have failed to warn players, or impose safety regulations governing this health and safety problem and produced industry-funded, biased, and falsified research that claimed that concussive and subconcussive head impacts in football do not present serious, life-altering risks. 94. The concussion lawsuits identified a number of retired NFL players who were diagnosed with traumatic brain injury, TB, following their playing career, and sought money, damages for injury and death, as well as medical treatment for retired players diagnosed with TB. 95. Ultimately, the claims were consolidated and settled in 2014. Under the settlement agreement, a former P player who has a qualifying diagnosis is eligible for monetary benefits. A diagnosis is qualifying primarily, but not exclusively, if rendered by physicians, approved by the NFL or in conjunction with NFL's Baseline Assessment Program, BAP. The BAP is intended both to identify symptoms of eligible conditions and to collect data for comparison to later testing, to establish any subsequent decline in a retired player's cognitive functioning. 96. Claims for monetary awards are first reviewed by a claims administrator. In the first instance, any appeals of claims administrator's determinations are heard by an appeals advisory panel. Any appeals from the appeals advisory panel are brought to the court that entered the settlement agreement. 97. According to a lawsuit filed by former black NFL players Kevin Henry and Najed Davenport, as well as media reports, the NFL began regularly insisting that physicians use race norms in determining whether a retiree had suffered cognitive impairment. The race Case 122 CV00871 Document 1 filed 2 January 2022 page 21 of 58. 22. Norming lawsuit. When black retirees were deemed to be cognitively impaired, the NFL regularly appealed such determinations if race norming was not used. 98. As alleged in the race norming lawsuit, the National Football League has been avoiding paying head injury claims under settlement agreement B based on a formula for identifying qualifying diagnoses that explicitly and deliberately discriminates on the basis of race. When being evaluated for the qualifying diagnosis of neurocognitive impairment, black former players are automatically assumed, through a statistical manipulation called race norming, to have started with worse cognitive functioning than white former players. As a result, if a black former player and a white former player receive the exact same raw scores on a battery of tests designed to measure their current cognitive functioning, the black player is presumed to have suffered less impairment, and he is therefore less likely to qualify for compensation. 99. Put another way, the NFL insisted that white people simply have better cognitive function than black people. Thus, if a black person was found to be cognitively impaired, the NFL would often not accept that diagnosis unless the physician gave adequate consideration to the possibility that black people simply do not function cognitively as well as white people. This is the very definition of racism, the assumption that someone is not as smart as another person because of the color of his or her skin,